Right. Cool. All right. So for probably the last year, I've been responsible to make launch happen, and launch happened. So now my main job is to think about what comes next. And I think about this number a lot. So I think a couple of things. So like, one thing that was really clear when we started with the sort of design of the Cosmos proof of stake system, and a bunch of people yesterday said, like, commented on how well thought out they were, like, that the Cosmos proof of stake system's economics were, and perhaps that's true, but it was also a product of like 2016. There were essentially no large-scale proof of stake systems that were working. Now we have, 2019 is like this explosive year of launching proof of stake systems. We're seeing an increasing amount of use of these things, and so the goal of the design of the current set of Cosmos staking economics, to me, was to get to roughly this point. But I would never have imagined when we started, when the work on Cosmos started, that we would get to this point in like 9 weeks. So Cosmos's economics are evolving at in an accelerated, compressed form that I would not probably have anticipated how quickly things would move. And so I think the job of my job as thinking about like research and the future is to start getting ahead of what does proof of stake look like now that we actually have people participating. So like the number is, we're at 60%. Like if you include the AIB, ICF, unstaked portion, it's like effectively 75% participation. 95% of the value in the original Cosmos Hub 1 Genesis has been interacted with on-chain. We are going to see exchange staking. We already have, OP is already doing exchange staking. We are going to see exchange staking in the, from Poloniex soon. So we're kind of like, we're already in like the mid stage of the proof of stake system lifecycle. And it's been a relatively short period of time, which is kind of crazy. It's obviously a very good thing, but it like sort of requires all of us to think really hard about how proof of stake economics will evolve. I also think that one of the sort of unique advantages of how we have built Cosmos is that we get to actually evolve the economic system perhaps quite a bit faster than other projects will be able to, because we've sort of built in a lot of tools for doing that. And so the rest of a lot of what this talk is about is sort of future directions in Cosmos economics. And the process of doing this is going to be, it's a live system now. It's a live billion-dollar money-moving system. There's a lot of community buy-in. There's a lot of discussion about how these economics are going to be involved, and obviously it's not just my decision, and so like you can consider this talk a bit of like an opening salvo in trying to drive the conversation about proof of stake economics forward. But like, just to like fully appreciate the consequences of what we're doing, our current economic model is what I call speculator taxation, where basically there is a wealth transfer through the staking reward from people who are speculating on the price of the token to people who are participating in the system. And that was intended as a bootstrapping mechanism, but that bootstrapping mechanism we can already see, we have a line of sight on the end of that bootstrapping mechanism. And so we need to start planning for a future, assuming that we want like validators to continue to be sustainable businesses, assuming that we want to like continue to win and like continue to do well. Actually, just a couple of other observations. I would say that in my mind, the Cosmos, Cosmos Hub economics right now are to a large extent subsidizing a lot of the proof of stake ecosystem that is coming into existence, because the bootstrapping phase of the Cosmos Hub has been so profitable for people who were participating in our testnets and sort of ramped up in the mainnet launch. It's created like sort of a revenue stream that like demonstrated that there was a viable business here, allowed people to raise venture capital, and has allowed for a lot of experiments and new networks to like have identified validator businesses that are robust and well, and have the capacity to validate on multiple networks. So all of this stuff is sort of the emergent phenomena of the bootstrapping phase of the Cosmos network. So the other thing that has become extremely clear to me since the launch of the network is that proof of stake is DeFi. And this was not something I think that was clear to me until the network launched. I have this very distinct memory though of comparing when we launched what the return on lending atoms was to margin on Poloniex versus what the reward rate was on staked atoms on the network. And those numbers have had like an interesting interplay with each other. I think we're also going to see we're going to see this to an ever larger extent. The other thing that is very clear to me is that exchange staking is going to sort of accelerate the financialization of these assets, because essentially what exchange staking does, and let me explain what exchange staking sort of looks like. You're an exchange, you think that on any given day, or like, the 21-day window of how many of net exits might be 10%, so you stake 90% of your coins, you deliver the rewards to people who hold the token on the exchange, and you keep 10% in order to handle entries and exits, or to handle exits from the exchange in unstaked coins. What that effectively does is creates, a Hoboy atom, a Poloniex atom, essentially like a not entirely fungible asset that is sort of underlying this, that underlies the system at which price discovery occurs. So that is the natural and inevitable state of the evolution of the system, and we should get ahead of it. So I think a lot about mechanisms for tokenizing staking rewards. I think a lot about in making sure that we have other mechanisms of doing price discovery on the security of the system in a world where we achieve like 90% staking participation. So where does this all lead? So we have this IBC project. The IBC project is moving forward at a rapid pace. And I think that in general, we should bet the future of the system on the success of IBC. So it's interesting, when we originally conceived of IBC, we had basically the use case of token transfers and transferring non-fungible tokens, asset. And that was also, and it was unclear what would be other use cases. And there were, I personally have been sort of always skeptical of the shared security approach, of this one giant pool of validator security that operates over the entire system. But this idea of what I like to call cross-chain validation, seems to be like a very powerful one, especially given how strong the underlying economic relationships in the hub are. And so the economic relationships of the hub are basically three sets of relationships. One is that there are atoms that are slashable. Atoms are a collateral asset. That collateral can be destroyed in exchange of misbehaviors. And that's like, there's an underlying social contract, there's an underlying expectation around atoms that they are a destroyable asset. The second question, the second piece of the economic relationship is that atoms are delegated. Atoms are delegated to validators. Those validators go out and perform the actual function in the network, collateralized by by those staked atoms. And then the third economic relationship is the distribution of rewards. So rewards get distributed from the activities of the validator through to their collateral pool by the protocol in a sort of fully integrated way. So if you think about like what the hub has done, the hub has built those sets of economic relationships. What cross-chain validation is the idea of taking those relationships and extending them into multiple chains. So that we have this vast pool of collateral, we have this this reward distribution mechanism, and we can do that via IBC. So we can have, and it's sort of been cool that like, you know, there's been so much conversation about it. It wasn't really clear to me whether or not the community was excited about this idea, not excited about this idea, understood the idea, but it seems like perhaps one of the most natural things to do after we have the base level IBC protocols started experimenting with this. And this model will create a huge opportunity. So like, you know, you get these naive questions where it's like, okay, like, what is the valuation model of the atom? The atoms are for, you know, transaction fees on the hub, how many IBC messages will pass through the hub, and then like, end of story. I think of the hub as primarily a map of economic relationships, and atoms as the collateral in those economic relationships, and the fees that will go to various delegation relationships are just anything that is an extension of that mapping between delegators and validators. So cross-chain validation is a way of vastly expanding that. You can launch new cryptography, privacy applications, decentralized exchanges, like almost anything that's conceivable can then be mapped onto the set of relationships, and we can run arbitrary software on it. And you know, as validators discover what is and isn't valuable, and bring those rewards, the transaction fees, etc., of running those new zones back to the hub, you will end up with you'll end up with a very powerful system. So I think that's so. Then we've had this idea, so that's like one set of directions, and I'll return to it because it's relevant to this sort of overall question. And there's a clear other challenge that we have in the network, which I call the Photon Problem. So like the original idea for the Photon started out as this blog post that Jay made in September, probably September or October 2017, about the idea of doing a second token on the hub that would be available or accessible through some sort of a spoon or an airdrop to the Ethereum distribution. I would say that's a good idea, but we should probably start with zooming out, understanding why something like this might be necessary, why it seems especially necessary as we are moving out of the bootstrapping phase of the Atom and the Cosmos Hub into sort of a more mature phase of the Cosmos Hub, and what we're trying to accomplish. So the sort of big observation that was sort of like an underlying philosophy in the economic design of atoms was that it is a bad thing to have your fee token and your economic security token be the same token. That it is, it leads to a bunch of extremely perverse problems that are difficult to manage. The biggest problem being, how do you price gas? So far on the hub, this has been irrelevant. We don't, like, most transactions are free or cost a diminished amount. But once we kind of rev up the capacity capabilities of the hub, this will become much more relevant. And so, what Ethereum, we have the counterpoint of the Ethereum design, which is ETH, gas is priced in ETH, gas gets repriced every block, and then you also have this like gas token exploit mechanism that like basically when gas prices are low, you can like store a bunch of stuff and then redeem it when gas prices are high. So ultimately, a fairly broken mechanism. It's not like it doesn't work at all, but it's certainly not optimal. So it would be good if we imagine this ecosystem of chains and applications that will emerge around the hub, to sort of imagine that a common pricing mechanism for real-world app resources, bandwidth, compute, storage, etc., will emerge, and that seems like a good thing to have. So we have options here. We don't have to create, well, we almost certainly have to create a new token, but that new token can come into existence through many different mechanisms. So one option is to do DAI, is to bring DAI into the Cosmos ecosystem. DAI has a natural way of pricing real-world resources is US dollars. Many of us are paying our data center bills, etc., in US dollars. So it seems relatively easy to figure out, okay, like, we have to buy your servers cost this much money, memory costs this much money. How should we price things? Dollars. Pegged ETH and Bitcoin also seem like a relatively good option and perhaps inevitably will become a major because in the world of crypto assets, ETH is money, Bitcoin is money. They're super liquid assets. That also seems like a good thing. Even though their price is volatile, there's quite a bit of liquidity around there, and that might be the natural. I think we'd all think it was really cool running a validator or being an atom delegator if a balance of Bitcoin and ETH just kind of ticked up every single day. That sounds kind of pretty awesome. And so, yeah, as you can tell from the reaction, the audience is enthusiastic about this idea. And honestly, that is very synergistic with the idea of what Cosmos was supposed to do. And then, sort of the third option is what I call the large-scale art project. What did you say?
What Cosmos is meant to do, which is increase our Bitcoin holdings.
Yes. Stacking sats is what Cosmos is for. And that is what people, that was the point. That's why atoms are not money. Money is external to the system. So I just want to talk about the art project idea. There's a couple of reasons why I like the term art project. The art project, conceiving this as an art project, rather than, I think gets the mental model of what we're trying to do right, if we decide to do this. As a community decide to do something other than peg DAI, peg Ether, Bitcoin. We decide to exploring the possibility of creating something new as the social consensus in which where funds, how we distribute and pay for the operation of the network. So the photon, I think, or at least I would advocate for reconceiving the photon, sort of stepping away from sort of Jay's original kind of very overspecified blog post to okay, the photon is a large-scale art project that, if successful, creates a token that was rewarded to the participants in this art project, and that we all appreciate exchanging back and forth with each other to fuel the operation of the network. So I think we all are getting the sense of how powerful the Cosmos software is. That it's not just Tendermint consensus. That this sort of year that we spent in 2018 on the Cosmos SDK was about getting more, building a powerful foundation for building interesting blockchain systems that is sort of bigger and better than just we have a new consensus engine. While Tendermint, especially at the time it was conceived, was revolutionary, we now see consensus and new consensus projects are a dime a dozen. But I think even in that world, the Cosmos SDK is special. I haven't seen anything else that's really like it. So if we were going to do sort of a large scale token distribution art project, then what we are trying to do is to distribute this as widely as possible. We're not the goal of we are not trying to conduct a fundraiser here. We're not trying to sell a bunch of tokens to retail users. What we are trying to do is sort of invite a vast community, to the largest possible community, to participate in this collective act of creation with us, and that's how we should conceive of it if we decide to do it. And so, things that I think are really interesting that are out there are the Ethereum distribution. I think the Edgeware lock drop has been interesting. The Bitcoin UTXO set, the Handshake, GitHub airdrop is also. These are all pretty interesting, pieces of more or less ready to go technology that we could use as part of a basis of doing a large scale token distribution. The next question is what is the actual mechanics of this airdrop? So if we, of how do we do this? We have, thinking of it as an art project, it ultimately just comes down to logistics. How do people generate signatures? What tools do they use? What software does this all run in? What is the user experience? All of those things. So should we be running the software on some future version of the hub that people interact with in real time, and it distributes the app? It distributes your token for your participation in the project. Should we do issuance via one or more zones? That definitely operates. It doesn't have to actually be post IBC. Just to give an example, we could spin up a zone, Cosmos Hub Validator set could run it, and it basically just records signatures against claiming claims of signatures of participation by, let's say, the Bitcoin UTXO set. We run it for 3 months. We collect all of the claims. We dump the state of that blockchain, and then on a future hub, the future hub upgrade is just these claims of participation translate into this Photon distribution, and now we will now when we upgrade the hub, we just do that distribution. So you could run this as 2 completely independent pieces of software, which is nice. And we don't necessarily really have to touch the hub, and we could do the distribution via future upgrade. Post IBC, these kinds of projects become permissionless, which is cool. But you don't even need the hub governance to necessarily be involved. So here's what I think are the advantages of doing the art project as a community. One is it's an opportunity to reach out significantly to the rest of the cryptocurrency community and ask them to be involved in Cosmos, to ask them to be involved in an act of creation around Cosmos. I think the second piece is that it would be a cool demonstration of interoperability, and it would be a cool demonstration of the economic coordination abilities of the Cosmos Hub. That the Cosmos Hub community can coordinate within themselves with a larger community to do something fairly large scale. And then finally, it's also the ability of the large scale the capabilities of the Cosmos SDK to do something interesting and unique that hasn't really been done before in cryptocurrencies. So that sort of brings me to the end of what my current set of thoughts on the art project are. This was mostly an introduction, and I just want to cover some other things that I think are sort of the emblematic of the evolving economics of the Cosmos Hub. So validator differentiation, I think, is perhaps the most exciting piece of where the future economics of the Cosmos ecosystem are going to be determined. So Sunny has this idea of a Sika DAO. I don't know how much he's talked about the details. I'll leave it to him. CrossChain Validation. The other thing that I think is going to be very cool is we are trying in the Cosmos SDK to make more of these economic relationships. So like the delegators to Occlusion, the delegators to Sika, the delegators to Chorus One, sort of first-class objects in the system by giving them addresses. And if we give them addresses, you can send IBC packets to them. So if you want to say, okay, this IBC packet, here's a zone, send an IBC packet containing a bunch of tokens. This token should just be these tokens should be automatically distributed proportionally to all, to the delegators of a particular validator or a particular set of validators. I think those sorts of things are going to allow for a very extensible experience around what the Cosmos Hub economics are. So this was a little bit of a sort of map of what I'm thinking about. And I think what the most important thing to take away from this talk is that as the Cosmos community, we have a lot of work to do in the next coming months, years, decades, exploring the economics of the system that we've built and the system that we're currently operating. That it's sort of, the enormous amount of thought that went into the system in the prior 3 years, we've already sort of started we can see the end of that, we can see beyond that horizon. We can see that there is this unknown territory of economic system design that we need to start thinking about, and our ability to forge new territory in that area will define what the Cosmos Hub is. So that was my presentation and what I'm working on, and happy to take questions. I hope this was intended as a sort of Kickstarter for a discussion. Questions?
The pre-IBC, post-IBC question. Is this something you'll look for input on at say an unconference session and then look to move into discussion or proposal as soon as the coming months, or?
Yeah, I definitely think, how to do this, how to extend the economics of the Cosmos ecosystem on top of a live system is it's something I don't presume to know how to do. I think it's interesting because I don't know how to do it, and that's what excites me about life. I didn't know how to launch the Cosmos Hub, figured it out. And I think this is an interesting question. Should these discussions be happening here? Should there be another forum in which we obtain them? This was I thought that this was a good opportunity to sort of kick off the discussion and put forward what is to me a clear realization that the economics of the system that we are operating right now must evolve. And to just get people, so it might be a little bit too early to do it today, but over the future Cosmos events, I expect to see lots of discussion, and my goal was to sort of kick that off. Here, Mike.
More of a comment than a question. I love the idea of the staking pool addresses, right? I'm imagining that in the future this new zone boots up and they have a game of stakes like event. And their thing is they're going to publish a set of winners on the game of stake events. They're going to give 5% of the token supply away. And the token supply is not given to the validators that win, but rather to the delegation pools of these validators, right? So all the validators fight it out in the game of stakes. And if your validator wins that game of stakes of that zone, all the delegators are going to get the tokens of the zone.
Yep.
Right? That seems like such a metal idea, right? Only problem is, this kind of thing is going to make, it's like when you delegate to Chorus, your delegation starts to feel a little more security-like, because like now if Chorus makes a good effort at this game of stakes things, you're going to make a return on this other token. So I wonder about the regulatory dimension of something like this, but it seems like a fundamentally interesting idea, the staking pool address.
Yeah, I'm not going to talk on stage about regulatory stuff. But we can talk about that later. I think the idea of these economic relationship of the fact that what this is an economic relationship, and the idea that these economic relationships are portable across systems, and that's a big part of interoperability, I think is important. Ooh. How are we on time? Ooh. Jack has one.
One thing that I've heard a lot in this area, there's been a lot of talk about staking derivatives. It wasn't something you mentioned, and I was just interested as to how that fits into this vision.
Okay, so to go back to Meher's point on, so the question was about staking derivatives, and so a couple of things that I think about that I think are really important about the staking derivatives question. One is that we should not call them staking derivatives. We need to come up with a new word that sounds less like a security. The second piece is that I think that they're an important and natural part of the system. That I think this is like one of the things that I've been disagreeing with Arthur Brightman a lot. I think that the financialization of proof of stake, because that was my whole point with saying proof of stake is DeFi. The financialization of proof of stake is actually healthy and important and inevitable in the development of these systems, and we should. A couple of things we should do is one is we should be open to enabling this in protocol. One of the ideas that's been out there is that Sunny really likes is just making the reward distribution address for a given set of stake, a given staking pool on IBC address, like an IBC channel. That would allow for quite a bit of extensibility there. So now you get the cycle. So just like think about this a little bit, like imagine the systems architecture. So like you have the Cosmos Hub. Cosmos Hub is the map of relationships between atom holders, their delegators. It's the place where slashing takes place. We extend slashing of Cosmos Hub to be like this generalized slashing oracle. We have all of these new zones popping up that run different smart contract languages, do different cryptography. That gets distributed via IBC. Those rewards get distributed via IBC to on the Cosmos Hub. Those get then trigger outgoing IBC packets to zones that exist in like various validator communities among their delegators. That then are accessible via tokens that exist on that zone. So now you start to see exactly like how this whole value creation sort of starts to work now. So atoms are collateral, they define these economic relationships, they are the union card of the Cosmos ecosystem. We have transaction fees both from new zones that are popping up that use this CrossChain Validation ecosystem. Fees get passed through the Cosmos Hub to other zones, and the Cosmos Hub continues to generate a significant amount of transaction volume because on a essentially block by block basis, there is demand for IBC traffic through the hub. And now we actually have like a robust economic system that is capable that delivers high security, that enables like enormous amounts of protocol innovation, and yet the hub system itself can remain roughly on the same order of complexity as the system that we built today. And so that's the world that like I think we should be working towards.
Cool. All right, everybody, thank you so much. Thank you, Zaki. Thank you.